I just have the feeling. That's why I'm going to keep away from you.
You know...
What?
I wonder why I'm like that.
Like what?
I'm never thinking about anybody, except myself. You don't think I'd go without you?
You mean that, Stan?
Absolutely. You satisfied?
Oh, Stan, I don't care for nothing now. Nothing in the world.
You're not a regular MD, are you?
Of course not. But anything my patients reveal to me is as sacred as though it were given under the seal of the confessional. That clear?
All right. You don't have to get on a soapbox. I'm going to be strictly on the level about this whole thing myself.
Will you get out of here? I should have known you were that kind of a...
It takes one to catch one. Listen to me. I'm no good. I never pretended to be. But I love you. I'm a hustler. I've always been one. But I love you. I may be the thief of the world, but with you I've always been on a level.
The following is a paid advertisement. Really? A paid advertisement? Wait, the B-Movie Cast got paid? Yes, the following is a paid advertisement. This episode of the B-Movie Cast is brought to you by the estate planning services of Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law. Remember, when the zombie apocalypse comes, things will move pretty fast.
The body should be disposed of at once, preferably by cremation.
Well, how long after death, then, does the body become reactivated?
It's only a matter of minutes.
Minutes? Well, that doesn't give people time to make any arrangements.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time to make funeral arrangements. The bodies must be carried to the street and burned. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gasoline and burn them. The bereaved will have to forego the dubious comforts that a funeral service will give. They're just dead flesh and dangerous.
So don't leave your estate planning needs until the last minute, because you don't know when that last minute could come. Call Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, at 859-351-2294. That's 859-351-2294. Remember, when you go, you don't want people saying,
"Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, is licensed for practice in the state of Kentucky. Consult your local attorney for matters outside of the state of Kentucky.
Command mark. The time will be running at X-20 seconds. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire.
Spawned by the continuing decline and fall of society as we know it, and created on the second-floor spare-bedroom studio in the Piedmont of South Carolina. Podcasting on a shoestring budget and changing the world one freak at a time. It's the B-Movie Cast with your host, Vince Rotolo.
From coast to coast and worldwide via the internet, this is the B-Movie Cast, the podcast of unusual film and television.
Hi, folks, and welcome back to the B-Movie Clubhouse for episode 483 of the B-Movie Cast. Before I go any farther, I want to get our contact information out of the way. We love hearing from all of you, so we have a feedback segment devoted to your comments and suggestions, and this is how you can contact us. Option 1, pick up your phone and dial 888-936-0808. This is a toll-free number and a very easy way to leave a voice message. Option 2, you can make your own MP3 file and send it in to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Or Use your smartphone, voice software, and record a call. Then just send that in as an attachment instead. Or option 3, if you're not into talking, you can just shoot us an email to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Our website is bmoviecast.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free, and there you can join us on the Facebook bmoviecast fan page and letterbox. Also, you can play the contest by sending in your answer by email to bmoviecast@gmail.com with contest in the subject line. And check out the links while you're there, or buy a t-shirt. I currently have smalls to 4X's. If you want to help us financially, there's a donation box you can click on as a supporter on the Lugosi, Karloff, Agar, and the infamous Xanadu level through PayPal. Also, the easiest way to donate is to click on the Amazon bar on the right side of our homepage. This Amazon link will take you to Amazon.com to make your purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can still log into your personal accounts when you get there. It's completely private, so think about us before you buy online. So now, through the miracle of modern technology and thousands of miles of wire, server farms, PCs, Macs, the Internet, and duct tape, we have our co-host from Lexington, Kentucky, author, editor, screenwriter, film producer, Nick Brown. He has a new website. It is authornickbrown.com. That's authornicbrown.com. He is the author of the Werewolf for Hire book series, starting with Blood Curse. He's also selling a book in collaboration with his wife, Fiona, the B-Movie Cookbook. All of these are available on Amazon. He's produced 2 movies, Wretch and Loss Prevention. Both can be ordered on Blu-rays or DVDs through Amazon. He is also the producer of a 3rd film, the soon-to-be-released Fall of Usher. And joining us today is Barry Harding. Barry is a lifelong aficionado of film noir, fantasy, chambara, and the Western film genres. His favorite directors are Jacques Tourneur, John Ford, John Huston, Michael Curtis, and Akira Kurosawa. His favorite actors are Peter Lorre, Bela Lugosi, Bogart, and Mitchum. He'd just as soon watch vegetative waste become compost as watch a Tom Hanks movie. He hails from Northwest Indiana and was introduced to the horror genre by his parents via the original Svengoolie, Jerry Bishop, and Chicagoland's Screaming Yellow Theater. Barry is educated as a biologist, geologist, and botanist, and has consulted on contaminant behavior in the environment for over 30 years. Wow. On a local household social strata scale, he falls below 3 cats, 2 clownfish, a hognose snake, and a coral-banded shrimp in getting nourishment or attention. Aww. Poor Barry. We welcome Barry Harding from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
I'm back. What a wonderful time.
It's been a long
It's been
time.
a while, Mary,
Yes.
Nick.
Yes, it has.
It has.
Well, I have to quote Carl Kolchak, Darren McGavin. Such formality from people that drink my beer.
That's an excellent quote.
Yes. Today's movie is a Barry Harding pick. It's Nightmare Alley from 1947. It's set in the gritty, surrealistic world of traveling carnies and is directed by Edmund Goulding. It's a long-lost film noirish cult oddity based on the best-selling 1946 novel by William Lindsay. Lost because it only played in theaters for a short time, then a lawsuit between the estate of producer George Jessel and 20th Century Fox kept the film from being released to VHS. It finally surfaced on DVD in 2005. It stars Tyrone Powers, who was trying to get away from his matinee idol image at the time, and a trio of women artfully portrayed by Joan Blondell, Colleen Gray, and Helen Walker. It's a haunting film, but unusual among film noir because it has top stars, a good production staff, and a relatively large budget. It wasn't a financial success on its original release, partly because of protests against some of the scandalous content. So be prepared, and although I didn't find it anywhere near as shocking as I'm sure the original 1947 audience did. I watched the Blu-ray from Amazon that Barry turned me on to. It's an excellent print. It was from the 35 nitrate composite print. And it had audio excerpts and interviews from 1979 or 71 with an interviewer, Henry King, and he discusses Tyrone Power. It has an audio commentary from 2005 with film historians James Orsini and Alan Silver. Stills, it has a trailer, it has an interview with critic Imogene Sarah Smith, an interview with performer and historian Todd Robbins, a 2000 interview with Colleen Gray, and it has a booklet with an essay by film writer and screenwriter Kim Morgan, and it has 6 tarot cards, and I was very careful not to drop any on the floor.
Yeah, you're referring to the Criterion print, yes. And it's out on Blu-ray.
Yes.
And, every now and then you see those Criterion movies that are dropped in price at like roughly 50%, either via online deep discount or Amazon, other online retailers, or Barnes & Noble usually carries them. But this film, a lot of times I'll go in there on those sales and I'll pick through, like a lot of the B-Movie Cast fans will flip through movies. And I saw that one, and it was in the back of my mind, like I had read about it, but there's sparse amount of written material on this film. And I did find it, Danny Perry had wrote a series of books in the early 80s called The Cult Movies, and there were 3 volumes. It shows up in Cult Movies 2, that came out in 83, and there's a nice write-up in there, and it's interesting because the prior movie discussed in that collection is Night of the Demon. Then they have Nightmare Alley, but the only other film book that talks about it that I'm aware of is The King. It's called King of the Bees, and author Clive Miller. This book came out in the mid '70s. He called this movie the quintessential B movie that was ruined by being an A production. So I do want to preface that this is not a B movie. It is a top cast with Tyrone Power, Joan Blondell. The sets are just amazing in this movie. So you've got a lot of talent that came about in constructing this movie. Mm-hmm. But I think you're going to say, Mary?
No, you're right. It was excellent. The production value on it.
I think it's.
Yeah. No, I was just agreeing. It's quite a well-made movie, and definitely at studio dollars.
I have one question. I read somewhere that in the original movie, in like the geek scene, the geek actually bites the head off of chickens. And I don't know, maybe I was in a coma or something, but I didn't see that in mine. Did you see it in yours?
They didn't show it on the screen, but they implied it directly. I mean, it shows a man and a chicken down in there, and then you hear the chicken, and then you hear, and the crowd goes, oh! So, yeah.
But I read somewhere where it was actually in the original movie.
I doubt that Zanuck would have allowed that to be filmed. I had not heard that, but I think let me preface. So I did buy the book by William Lindsay Gresham, and the novel's very dark, and there's no happy ending in the book. And I won't reveal the ending to any folks, but I do want to preface. So the novel, a little bit about the construct of the actual novel, and then how it was adapted to a movie. Okay. But so what's interesting about the book is Gresham was very much interested in the tarot. And each chapter of the novel is based on different tarot cards.
Oh.
And so the tarot are, the major suits are called arcana, the major arcana. And they begin with, there's different suits, but in the case of the novel, it begins with the Fool, and then it ends with the Hanged Man. And we can talk about the Hanged Man, and that reoccurring theme we see throughout the movie, and also the theme of alcoholism runs rampant. In fact, I know of no other movie that has alcoholism as prevalent. Maybe Billy Wilder's The Lost Weekend is about the only movie that I can think where that comes out as prevalent. But I'm going to read, this is a preface, this is card 1 or chapter 1, The Fool. Stan Carlisle stood well back from the entrance of the canvas enclosure. under the blaze of a naked light bulb and watched the geek. The geek was a thin man who wore a suit of long underwear dyed chocolate brown. The wig was black and looked like a mop, and the brown grease paint on the emaciated face was streaked and smeared with the heat and rubbed off around the mouth. Gresham goes on to describe the behavior of the geek, and he's in a cage surrounded with small snakes. And Stanton Carlisle, the main character of the film, feels sympathy for the snakes. And, of course, the geek goes on and proceeds to chew up some snakes. So this novel introduced that whole concept of the geek to modern vernacular at the time. So I was talking with Nick earlier that the concept of a geek, today we think of what a geek is, like a nerdy person. But back then it was this vile, dirty freak, and so, but the novel, I really encourage people to, one, if you get the Criterion edition, look at the supplements, particularly the supplement on the whole the carnival, the 10-in-1 concept, where you would go into this carnival, this so-called sideshow, and there'd be 10 acts for the price of one. Now, I grew up in the early 70s, as a child, and I remember sideshows. Normally you would see them like at a carnival or a county fair.
Yeah. There was usually like a bearded lady and a skinny guy. They weren't bizarre like they were back in the old days. They didn't have geeks and stuff when I went to see them.
Yeah, and that was toward the end. That was, I think, the third revival. And then in the 90s, you remember the the X-Files episode with the conjoined twins, and the twin leaves the guy's torso and goes around killing people, and Scully and Mulder are investigating it. And there's Jim Rose had this sideshow, and I think it just ended maybe 10, 15 years ago. You see the geek is in that episode.
Okay.
Now the whole Electra, the Colleen Gray's character, she's the electrified woman. You see that. I actually saw at the Museum of the Weird down in Austin, Texas, and they've got the Minnesota Iceman and Ice, the so-called Neanderthal man in ice. They've actually have a Dynamo Dan. He's a terrific performer, and he does that bit with the put the light bulb in his mouth and it lights up the whole bit. So you do see remnants of these terrific sideshow acts pop up in today.
Don't they still do that in New York? At the beach at Coney Island, don't they still have like weird, not sideshows, but weird kind of, people pounding nails into their noses and...
Well, and that's the thing, Mary. You still see that, especially, okay, think about this. The carnival industry still exists, but that aspect of it's kind of died out, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the weirder industries that has risen to prominence in the last 20 years has been the haunt industry, haunted houses.
That's right.
And there are a lot, because I'm a fan of haunted with the Asylum Haunt in Louisville several times, and Brian did his first documentary was Monsters Wanted about the haunt industry. And one of the things that a lot of haunts will employ are people who do those kind of sideshow tricks and sideshow attraction things, because people wait in line a long time sometimes to get into these haunts.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't want are a bunch of drunk people waiting to get into a haunt, mostly teenagers and 20-somethings, getting too rambunctious. And so you need to keep them entertained. And one of the ways to do that is to have fire eaters, burlesque dancers. But directly to your point about the guy with nails in his head, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but there's a performer that worked at the asylum, and that was what he would do, is he would go around, he would let you staple money to him.
Oh.
And the bigger the denomination dictated where he would let you staple it.
Oh,
because he
you
got,
would staple
he got
it on
cheap
him.
money. And he also would do the nail into the nose trick, which, yeah, and okay, I'll tell you a quick funny one about that. He did this at the premiere of Monsters Wanted also. And one of the actresses that we knew at the time got up and worked with him on it. She didn't know him, but he needed somebody from the audience and picked her because he kind of knew her. And I asked him later, because every time I'd see him, I said he picks girls. And I said, why do you pick girls? And he said, did you see how Lauren reacted? And I was like, yeah, she was very timid. You know, she's just tapping it because she's like terrified that she's going to drive this nail through this guy's face. And even though she was driving it into his face. And he's like, yeah. And I learned that the hard way because I had a show, I picked some dude to do it once. And he just whacked me in the face with the hammer and drove the nail all the way to the head.
Ouch, ouch.
And that hurts. You know. Yeah, so he learned the hard way about that. So yeah, those things are very much alive now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I tell you what though, before we go much further, we usually get the contest out of the way at the beginning.
Yes.
So let's take a second and do the contest. Is that cool?
I'm sure Stan Hudgens won.
Oh, yeah, I probably.
Or Don Falcos. He wins a lot, too.
Well, you know, they just get every daggone movie we put out there. It's rough.
I know.
And then, okay, this is the hell that I go through, Barry. Nick, the movie was too hard. Nick, the movie was too easy. Nick, the movie was too hard. Nick, the movie was too easy. How was this week's movie, Mary?
It was hard.
What was it, Mary?
Oh, it was Frankenstein Island from 1981.
Yeah, and who was in that?
I have no idea.
And not a lot of really good people, but you did have John Carradine. Because John Carradine would show up for anybody who had $20 and a bottle of Jack. So, and I think they had $19.50 and 2 bottles of Jack to get him on Frankenstein Island.
So he was real close to being a geek himself.
I wouldn't say that. He was just really, really willing to do whatever. As long as you paid him, he'd show up and do your movie.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, okay, our first movie today has been donated by Patrick Kelly. It's a Blu-ray of It from 1990, appropriate for this season. According to Patrick, this is a 2-part miniseries based on Stephen King's 1986 novel and stars Harry Anderson, Dennis Christopher, Annette O'Toole, Tim Reed, John Ritter, and Richard Thomas. Tim Curry plays the murderous clown Pennywise. And some trivia, Curry had the earliest call time of any of the actors due to the time he needed to apply his daily clown makeup. Oof. I have to admit, I've not watched any of that. I can't.
Well, it's,
clowns
you
are
know,
creepy enough without.
I gotta say, Mary, for a made-for-TV movie, the 1991 It was, or was it? It was 1990. Excuse me. That was pretty hardcore.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and the remake that they did recently, the two film remake of it, which was a more modern updating of it, was also pretty hardcore. But honestly, it was no worse than most other horror movies I've seen. It had a lot of good elements, but at the time when the TV miniseries ran, that was some shocking stuff that they put on the screen.
Yeah, I can't watch it.
As long as it doesn't contain star feature Tom Hanks, I'm good with it.
It doesn't. It actually can. Hey, it has John Boy, what was his name? Richard Thomas from Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, the winner is Stephen Turek.
Well, hey.
I guess he would like that.
I know Stephen would like that, Harry. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
And if he doesn't, he can turn around and give it to me. I like it.
Okay. Our second DVD prize has been donated by Daryl Majeski, creator and editor of Scream Magazine. This is a 3-disc DVD set of Paranormal Case Files Ghost Investigations from 2012. Yeah. The Paranormal Research Institute, PRI, conducts scientific investigations of paranormal phenomenon across the globe. Disc 1 is in York, England. Disc 2 is in Pendle and the Anchor Pub, based in the beautiful Dales of England. And Disc 3 is set in Scotland's most haunted and secret bunker from the Second World War. Now that I could watch. And the winner is Don Falcos.
Well, there you go. And Don, as we said, Don is one of those guys who gets all of our movies.
Yeah, but I mean, the odds of him always getting picked in this barrel of balls is amazing. I'm just, wow.
He's a mentalist like Stanton Carlisle.
Must be, yeah.
That's it. He's mental.
No. Our third prize is a mystery gift from Kenny B. Santito. Guaranteed to be worth more than 2 minutes it took you to enter the contest. Guaranteed to be a DVD or Blu-ray, a book or magazine, and some knick-knack, and something from south of the border, preferably legal something. And again, if you get it, send us a picture of what it is, because I'm getting a kick out of these pictures. And the winner is Don Sample. Congratulations, Don.
Congratulations, Don. You're our big winner.
Yes. But
wait, there's more.
There's more. And our last prize is from our one and only Nick Brown. And do you know what the movie's going to be yet, or is it going to be a mystery movie?
Let me hang on a second. I'm actually looking around at what I've got in the pile. Yeah, I could give them that. But you know what? In honor of our discussion of geeks and sideshow freaks, I am going to give away a copy of Brian Cunningham's documentary, Monsters Wanted.
Ooh, that's a good
because I've still got a few copies of that laying around. So
ooh, cool. And the winner is Santito.
Well, there you go. And, okay, I will say this is good because the odds of us finding a movie Santito wouldn't have seen or didn't have,
that's true.
Pretty slim.
That's true.
But I'm going to bet he hasn't seen and probably doesn't own Monsters Wanted. So there we go.
Very true. Good one. Yay!
So this
nice
is all. Yeah, I think so. And now, let's go back to talking about the movie. And I'm sorry I interrupted us. I just wanted to make sure we got the contest in.
Yeah.
Because we have a habit of forgetting it if we don't.
No, sometimes it ends up at the very end of the podcast.
Yeah, people don't realize that there's a flow to this and it's all live. I always assume that you guys edited that later and added that and spliced it. So, wow, this is like live TV in the early 50s doing this podcast with you guys.
Yeah, basically.
Well, and it is, and what's more interesting, when Vince used to run it, he was kind of editing it on the fly as he was recording it. And so that's why we would record the cast in the morning on Sunday, and it would be by around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. Because he basically just went in and formatted the files and put everything together and uploaded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, yeah.
Yeah, now we're in the days of, okay, we're recording this, just for the listeners' benefit, we're recording this Monday evening, October 11th, 2021, and if it is up before Sunday, I will be shocked. And I would be doubly shocked because I didn't do it, and that would really freak me out. But anyway.
Yeah, that would mean I did it, and that would be a real mess.
So our good friend Terry Frost had presented on, I think, one of the B Movie Cast pages, or the page. He had his own commentary, and he did a great overview. I don't want to detract from what he had presented, but I think it's important that we reframe this in context with Gresham. Now, I remember as a kid pulling from the library, as a lot of boys are interested in things like Houdini. Gresham wrote a book on Houdini. It's out of print. And that book, went online on eBay and Abe Books, antiquarian booksellers, and that book goes for about $1,000 now.
Wow.
As does his Monsters of the Midway. I think that's what it's called. Maybe that was a book about the Chicago Bears, but it was a book about freak shows. That one is also scarce, and it also commands a high price. But Gresham, as the story goes, he was waiting for repatriation with a fellow named Joseph Daniel Halliday. And they fought in the Spanish Civil War. So this is 38, 39, winter of 38. And they were fighting on the Loyalists, that would be Soviet sympathizers, communist side. And, of course, Franco's regime got in whenever, 39, somewhere thereabouts. But while he was sitting there in a hole with this fellow, Gresham learned about freak shows and learned about the geek. And it stuck in his head. And those are really the seeds of his novel, Nightmare Alley. And this dude was pretty deep cat in terms of, he understood Carl Jung, and he was into Freud. And then he got obsessed with Soothsaying and the tarot cards. So you see this really deep, almost mystical quality of this novel. And this is right after the horrors of World War II when this novel came out. So you had, people were reading this, and it was so dark. Now, what had happened was Tyrone Powers read the novel, and he wanted to get away. And Mary Prefaces, he was doing movies like Zorro and these Douglas Fairbanks Jr. type movies, these swashbucklers, where he's the dashing romantic lead. And he felt like his true repertoire, his acting depth, wasn't being represented in those movies. So he talked Zanuck into doing this, and Zanuck hated it and thought it was going to detract from his star power. And then, oddly, at the same time, Colleen Gray, who plays Molly, the moral compass of the story and of the movie, she also read the novel and went to Zanuck and said, "Hey, I want to play Molly." And so all these little pieces came together. But what's really weird about this movie, in my opinion, there is not a film noir anywhere that's quite like this movie because of the nature with the cinematography, the direction. The director's really known for these romantic melodrama musicals and not film noir, although I think he had done a few. Golding. I think when you look at the movie, pay special attention to the cinematography. Now, Lee Garms was known for this style, and there's different names for it. But the lighting is such, they call it northward lighting. And in the commentary, they talk about this at length. But the other style is represented by the general style called fumato. And the fumato is like the Renaissance paintings. Da Vinci comes to mind, where you have this kind of wispy look around the eyes, and it changes the depth of field. So in those early scenes in the carnival, you see that
wonderful
dappled lighting, that misty lighting.
Yeah.
That just is like, what? And, Guillermo del Toro's remaking this movie, or has remade it, comes out in December.
I can't wait to see that.
He is going to go ape shit, excuse my language. His people are going to go crazy with the potential of that carnival world.
I know.
And I know exactly where he'll take it.
Well, he's actually saying it's not a remake, though.
No, he'll go right to the novel.
Yeah. It's a readaptation of his novel.
But Nick, do you want to talk about some of the stars in the movie? Or?
I want to talk about the Del Toro movie. Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, William Dafoe, Mary Steenburgen, Ron Perlman. I can't wait. They already wrapped production, so it's going to be good.
Yeah, and Dafoe plays the huckster, essentially the so-called carnival barker. Oh. So he owns the 10-in-1, and I can see Willem Dafoe as, it might even be narrated through his eyes. I don't really know. The previews suggest to me that he plays an important role.
Wow.
But I don't know, Bradley Cooper in this role. I don't know. I can see it, I guess.
It's funny you said that you have some skepticism about Bradley Cooper in it. I actually think he's going to do a really good job, and the reason is he and Del Toro really clicked when they were making this film. And apparently they just got together and read through the script and bounced things off of each other. And Cooper really had a lot of input into how the Stang character's character arc is going to develop in this within the framework of Del Toro's movie. And again, as you said, this film is not a remake of the 1947 film. This is a new adaptation of the novel.
Yeah.
And so it's going to go different places. And Del Toro's not afraid to go dark.
Yeah.
He's done some really dark stuff. I mean, he's done some fun stuff, but when he decides to go dark, he can go dark. And I think, am I wrong? I mean, this guy, and
you're right.
He also has a really good eye for the aesthetic of stuff like this.
Yeah.
So, I think this is going to be one to check out. And I'm going to also preface before we get much further in, I don't want to give much away about how this film ends. So let's not talk too much about the ending other than, we can, in general terms. Because, again, this is one that I don't think a lot of people have seen at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I'm always happy to spoil a movie that it's kind of like, shame on you if you haven't seen this yet. By the way, Bruce Willis was dead in The Sixth Sense. The whole movie. Dead. Okay? Dead. Oh, and Rosebud is a sled. Okay. So anyway, and Anna Karenina gets hit by a train. Okay, anyway. Just, trying to lay out the ground rules here for what I'll spoil. Okay. And this one I'm not going to spoil.
Okay.
So,
in this movie, it's not a mystery. It is a redemptive photo play, but the novel is very dark. I think the story is very linear. The thing that really sets this apart from your typical B movie is this A cast, although you see a lot of B faces. Now, we talked about Tyrone Powers. Joan Blondell was transitioning into, and of course, she was the bubbly blonde earlier in the 30s. She was about 40 years old when she made this movie. And she is fantastic. In my opinion, she could have been nominated for a supporting role as Xena. And Xena is a weathered soothsayer, a mentalist. Her husband's an alcoholic, Pete. And Pete was once a stage name act as a mentalist. He had deteriorated quite a bit. And then so she's pretty much keeping the act afloat. Stanton Carlisle, that's Tyrone Powers, he gets interested. And Nick, I'll let you tell the plot line. But then you also have Colin Gray, who actually made some low B-budget movies later on in the 50s. The Wasp Woman, I think she's in, and she's in some others. But she was like an A-list actress, had made some big-name feature films in her mid-20s. Mike Mazurki always plays a heavy. He's a big-boned, about 6'4", 6'5". He was a football player and a boxer. I know him best in the John Ford movie Donovan's Reef with John Wayne and Lee Marvin.
Yeah.
Right, and he's one of the wise men in the bit. But Mazurki is great as the strong man, Bruno.
He was awesome. And, it's funny because you mentioned, that, but I always think of him because he did a lot of stuff in the old Dick Tracy serials and stuff. And because he had that, he was one of those guys who had that perfect look for one of those weird Dick Tracy characters.
Yeah.
Because Dick Tracy was okay, in my opinion, Dick Tracy had the first supervillains before there were supervillains. And, you know, he always had these bizarre people that he was chasing. And he really fit the bill for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dude had been in over 100 movies.
Yeah.
You know, he was definitely a working actor and well known.
You see him, you know his face immediately.
Yeah.
He played the heavy. I think there's a scene in the John Donovan's Reef where, of course, he's fighting John Wayne in there. You know, or he's punching somebody, he's drinking beer, and he's throwing someone over a bar in your typical John Ford movie. So, terrific actor. We should talk about Helen Walker. She's really does a profound performance in this movie. Her character is one of the most despicable characters in any movie I've ever seen. And she's even, and Kate Blanchett plays, she's going to have fun with this character in the adaptation of the novel. But she is really a slippery character. And when you're watching the movie, I won't reveal certain plot lines, but I can't figure out, is she setting a trap for Stanton or what's going on? But the lighting suggests when he first walks into the psychiatrist's office, the lighting shows this like web, this silhouette on the ceiling. And it's obviously a spider web set in a trap, right?
Yeah.
Go on, Nick.
Oh, I was just going to say that's a brilliant observation. And yeah, I noticed that too. And it's little things like that, little touches like that make for a really good movie. And this,
German expressionism.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, I can't talk from and I'm being sick. German expressionism. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I've developed an allergy to German expressionism because we talk about it so much on the cast.
It's so influential in this movie, the lighting and the...
I'm getting ready to get my EpiPen out.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay, sorry.
No, but yeah, the lighting in this is... Wait, a film noir uses German expressionist lighting? Inconceivable! This is ridiculous. No, but you're right. She is. It really does come across like she's laying a trap, and I don't think it's given too much away to say that Stan meets, I guess, his female alter ego in her.
Most definitely.
And that's the thing, you know, because we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning with most film noirs. You know, you have some character that you were sympathetic with.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, we had Peter Lorre in Fiend Without a Face last week, or last episode. And he was so sympathetic, and you were just rooting for him, and you knew that bad things were going to happen, and you knew that it wasn't going to turn out, but you really were hoping against hope that somehow something good was going to come up.
Yeah.
And in this movie, I really found myself just sort of hoping that Molly would meet somebody nice at some point. That was about the only thing that was the only thing I was rooting for.
I know.
Well, so Stanton, I went through and looked at his good deeds. So he did 2 good deeds in the movie. Did you recognize what the 2 good deeds that Power did?
Well, he gave Molly money.
That was one of them. And the other one, he gave her a Coke.
Yep.
He got her Coca-Cola in the very early.
Well,
And
I thought he was just trying to get
the rest of the movie, he's exploiting people, basically. But there is good in him, right? But she's the moral compass of the movie. And man, what a, electrifying, no pun intended, because she plays the electric woman, but electrifying performance. And I really thought the energy was there with her, particularly when she goes into that speech. And the studio imposed the speech about God and, you're tampering with evil. You shouldn't be, so she gives Stanton that lecture about God.
Yeah.
And I think audiences of that day needed that. They needed to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm 100% certain that isn't in Gresham's prose anywhere.
Yeah.
Well,
that might have been his way of getting around the censors too. He had to have that.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. You've got the Hays Code was being enforced with a hammer at that point.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting because this was just after World War II. And you had this whole, and Fiona and I have had a lot of discussions about how the end of World War II in a lot of ways changed what was scary and what was dark. Because all of a sudden you had this massive amount of the American population who had been in Europe and in Asia during the war and had seen and done just these horrible things. It was war, and it was a massive war. And Europe was laid waste to, parts of Asia were, and it was horror come to life. And that's when, if you think about it, like the Universal monsters, now, yeah, we did have, the Creature from the Black Lagoon came, but most of the other ones, they kind of petered out after World War II. And part of the reason for that, we think, is because people were so shocked. Their threshold had gone up, but Hollywood hadn't really caught up content-wise because of the Hays Code. And so you would find things more horrific sneaking in or coming in a different way. So what were people scared of after World War II? They were scared of nuclear bombs. So all of a sudden everything was a result of radiation. And they were scared of aliens because of the whole UFO craze that happened.
Yeah.
So those were the things that became scary. And you think about a movie like this and how that must have affected what they could portray and how they portrayed it. Because I'll be honest, I was surprised they got away with some of the stuff they did in the film.
Yeah.
There was some... And I mean, by today's standards, the film was very tame.
Yes.
But by 1947 standards, this film, I could totally see it being scandalous.
I know there was premarital sex in it, and not on screen, but implied.
It's definitely implied strongly.
Yes.
Strong enough that it leads to a shotgun wedding, actually.
Yeah, it's not too many movies that you see. So there's quite a bit of adultery occurring in this movie, and there's that dark theme of alcoholism, and then there's also the nature of people ripping off other people, exploiting people. So it's not a feel-good movie really by any stretch.
Oh.
The thing about the film that really struck me as being odd is, most, and Mary set this up talking about film noir, most of the time it's a guy that gets in trouble with a girl and there's people after him, and then there's this redemptive cycle where the anti-hero, may end up in a pit, but may come out of that pit. So this is a little bit different. Stylistically, it reminds me a little bit of Turner's Out of the Past, but that's got a flashback. This movie's very, very linear. The book jumps around. There's a lot of past things going on with Stanton Carlyle where they Gresham develops his psychosis, right? Now, this film, you're like, where's this? You could just see him, the deterioration. Now, as he progresses, Ben Nye was the makeup artist at 20th Century Fox. Of course, he's known for making the makeup of The Fly in the Vincent Price classic, right? So you see as Stan goes through his metamorphosis, you start seeing that makeup come in.
Yeah. And
it must have been shocking to those people that, went to the movie thinking they're going to see a romantic Tyrone Powers movie. But I don't know if you guys watched the trailer at all. It's totally pitched as a romantic melodrama in the trailer.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and in fact, the trailer, the one that I watched, and was mostly really intense music with a whole lot of scenes of Tyrone Powers grabbing onto one of the three leading ladies. And, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of dialogue in the trailer that I watched, and I did not expect the movie to go the way that it did. And this is one of the things, I had never seen Nightmare Alley before this viewing, and I went out of my way to avoid anything about it before I watched it. Yeah. Because I like to come into these things and be a little bit, you know, surprised. Mm-hmm. And this one totally, I watched the trailer and then I watched the film, and it's just like you said, I was not expecting it to be as dark and film noir-y as it was. And I definitely didn't expect all the supernatural elements to it, or the paranormal elements to it. You know, the tarot cards and destiny and all this, and doing, you know, the psychic powers and talking to the dead and all that. It's interesting.
Some folks lump it under the horror subgenre, but it is film noir based upon the character and certainly the lighting, the settings. But there are horrific elements. It's definitely not romantic. It's not a melodrama. It is dramatic, you know. So maybe noir drama, but it's pretty unique. And like I said, I don't see too many movies quite like it at all. Really,
no.
It's a singular, unique movie. I think
it reminded me a lot of Freaks.
Yeah, and that comes to mind. That would be a great double bill. You know, to have this Freaks. And then, you know, maybe throw the Indestructible Man, you know, light B movie, you know, with Lon Chaney, have a movie like that in there. But, you know, it has that. Now, in the 50s, you started to get some of the circus movies. You know, you had the Big Circus and you had the Greatest Show on Earth. Those are different types of movies. Those are epic, you know, big budget movies. But I don't think there's been any movie that really depict carny life ever like as adequately as that. Guillermo del Toro will certainly nail that whole aspect. But people are probably wondering, what the hell is this movie about? And we've touched upon, you know, certain elements. Nick, do you want to attempt to talk about the plot? Or?
No, I think I can. And this is the thing, the plot is actually pretty straightforward. Yeah. It's just the way that it gets to where it's going is kind of, you know, it is, as you said, it's a singularly unique movie. But did you have something, Mary?
Yeah, I love the way they have three women, strong characters in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
That is not usual in movies of that time.
It isn't, right. And the thing that I like about it is the Xena character. Mm-hmm. And I was particularly impressed with Joan Blondell playing her, because she's a woman who's made her mistakes and is trying to essentially pay penance for them.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And, you know, her character is the most sympathetic, and you don't, a lot of times when a film would have an extramarital affair going on in this period, the woman involved or the man would be portrayed in a dark light, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, it would be, you know, there was something wrong with her. Or she was an unfaithful harlot and whatever, you know, and the husband's the victim. And in this, really, she does not come across as being evil or sinning or anything else. She is a very sympathetic character, and it's a tightrope that she's walking with that.
Yeah.
And she does a great job of it.
She really does. She really does.
You know, and then, as you said, you've got Molly Carlisle, that's Colleen Gray. She is you described her as the moral compass, and that's it. I mean, she is introduced literally, I mean, she's the electrified woman, but she's very much Little Miss Sunshine, and she represents all that's good in this. Xena, I think, represents all that is on the fringe of the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And then, without giving much away, and her name, Lilith, Lilith Ritter, Helen Walker's character. I mean, she is, well, as we said, she is the female version of Stan.
Yeah.
And, okay, so let's go into the film. Is there anyone else you'd like to talk about, Mary, real quick? Or?
No.
Okay,
well,
cool.
I think one important thing to comment on is the main characters are all really good-looking people, and there's some irony there that you're dealing with a so-called freak show, a sideshow, and then you got arguably the handsomest man in Hollywood at that time, and then Colleen Gray is absolutely stunning. Joan Blondell is stunning, and then Helen Walker, in her own way, she's a very statuesque, imposing, beautiful person as well. I'm just talking the peripheral, the look.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think Zanuck recognized, well, we've got to have good-looking people. And now, again, talking about Del Toro, he'll have fun with it because he's introduced some new characters. Jojo the dog boy, who wasn't in the novel, is not in this movie. The novel had a guy called Major Mosquito, and he was a little person, and he was a naughty person in the novel. That person's not in either film adaptations, and I suspect it'd be because of the portrayal. It would be a degrading portrayal of a little person in today's vernacular to have that.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting. So let's bite into the story.
All right. So, and the film opens up, and we're in a carnival, and essentially you've got this guy, and he's one of the sideshow attraction, I guess the 1 in 10, as you were calling it, guy, and he's a barker, and his name is Stan Carlisle. And Stan is essentially the showman that sets up a psychic reading show by Xena the Great, or I don't remember what her stage name fully was, but it was Xena Krumbi. And the whole deal is that he would go out into the audience and hand out these cards, and people would write questions on the cards, and then they would put them into an envelope, and they would put their initials or their signature on the outside of the envelope. He would then collect X number of them, take them back, slip through a door under the stage to go under the stage to hand them to Xena's husband. Now, Xena's husband, Pete, was a raging alcoholic. And this is how you're introduced to them, is they literally have to wake him up and sober him up enough to do his job. And his whole job is to open these cards up and kind of show them to Xena. And it's the way they're doing it is Xena has her crystal ball there on the stage, and the crystal ball is actually a window looking straight down under the stage where her husband is writing what's in the notes on a chalkboard and showing it to her. And then, of course, Stan comes up on stage, hands Xena the cards. They put them in a bucket and then burn these cards, only these are not the ones that he collected from the audience. So the audience is just stunned by this woman's amazing psychic abilities. And as they're going through this show, it's a good show, but afterwards we have Stan, who's Tyrone Powers. He goes over to Molly, who is the electrified woman, and that's Colleen Gray, and they're talking between shows, essentially. And this, by the way, was one of the 2 good deeds that Barry mentioned, because he hands her a Coke, and while she's drinking the Coke, they're talking about this act. And she explains to Stan that Xena and Pete actually used to do the act as a major production. And they were headlining in hotels, and they had an agent and everything else. And when they did the show, they weren't doing it with these tricks with the crystal ball. They had a code, this secret code, that when one of them went out into the audience, that person would say, pick up an object from one of the viewers, hold it up. And the way that they would announce to Xena what the object was, they would say, Xena, what is this? Quick now, tell me now, what am I holding? And the way they would speak, the tone and the specific words they used were this really elaborate code that would allow Xena to know, okay, he's holding up a gold pocket watch. And, the code even worked for getting initials from people or describing the person. So this code really allowed Xena to come across as a genuine bona fide psychic. Unfortunately, she started stepping out on her husband, and this drove her husband, who was actually the star of the show then, drove her husband to start drinking. They split up for a while, and she ended up in the carnival and literally ran into him a year or two before, and he's just about the most alcoholic I've ever seen portrayed in a film from, before I watched Leaving Las Vegas. I mean, it's seriously.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, he was the drunkest of drunks, and his whole attention was on getting his next drink. And, I mean, that's a fairly realistic portrayal of alcoholism, which you didn't necessarily get back in the 1940s, for sure.
He was like one step from being a geek himself.
Exactly. He was, and that was another thing. They described the film actually opens with Stan watching the Geek Show, and his comments, is, how does somebody sink so low that they end up being a carnival geek? And literally, the carnival geek works for a bottle of booze, a cot, and, a couple of meals a day. I guess if he's not eating the heads of chickens. A couple of meals to supplement his diet of chicken heads.
Yeah.
But anyway, and his comment is, well, how does somebody sink so low? But here you have Pete, and he is almost at that point.
Yeah.
Well, Stan, his first thought is, if I can get this code, I could become somebody big. I could make the big time. This is my big break. And he's already, it turns out, having an affair with Xena. And Pete I get the feeling Pete sort of knows that Xena's having an affair with him. And he just doesn't care because all he cares about is his next drink.
Yeah.
And so, but Stan tries to charm Xena into giving him the code, and essentially Pete hears that and puts the kibosh on it. And Xena's not willing to do it either because she knows that this code is extremely valuable. She's already had people offer her a lot of money for it. And so as the film progresses, Stan shifts his tactics, and he decides, okay, the best way to get her to give us the code is to make out like, hey, we can come back to the big time using this code. You can use that money to then put Pete into a cure. And a cure is essentially a sanitarium to dry somebody out from alcoholism or drug addiction. So, this was back before you really had what we would consider modern rehab programs. This was just, stick them in the cure and they'll dry them out and hopefully keep them from dying. Because, okay, for those who don't know much about alcoholism or really strong addictions, but especially alcohol is one of the stronger ones, actually, and your body will go into essentially a form of shock from cutting out alcohol. And you'll get what's called the DTs, delirium tremens, and that's where you'll shake, you'll have a hard time focusing, you just, while your body is fighting through this. And people have died from quitting drink without proper care and without support to help. Mm-hmm. And so she wants to put Pete into a cure because he cannot quit drinking. I mean, she's trying to wean him off of it. Literally, she's weaned him down to 1 or 2 shots a day, and you see his hands trembling as he's desperately going around the carnival looking for somebody to give him a drink. And there's the one guy he's kind of the bootleg booze guy, and he's selling moonshine out of his camper. And, Stan had just bought some. And he's like, hey, I've got this bottle of booze. And then he sees Pete coming, and he actually hides it in Xena's trunk her prop trunk. And then he decides, well, this might be my chance to really show Xena that he needs help. So I'm going to go ahead and give this bottle of booze to him. Well, remember, this was moonshine, so it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
And Xena, to burn the cards, uses wood alcohol in the same kind of bottle. So a careless accident on the part of Stan, and I do believe it was an accident. I don't think he set out to poison him, but he does end up accidentally poisoning Pete. And so Pete passes, and at that point, Xena is just heartbroken because she knew that she was responsible, her philanderous nature was responsible for Pete's alcoholism. Now she thinks it's her fault Pete's died from it. So, she's kind of lost something really precious to her there. And she decides that she's going to go ahead and do the code system with Stan. And while all this is going on, Molly is actually kind of under the care of Bruno, the strongman. And it was a weird relationship there, and I'm kind of going back on this a little bit, backing up. But if you watch Bruno watch Molly,
he's in love with her.
He's way in love with her. And I think Molly sees Bruno as kind of a father figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she loves Bruno like a brother, which is the thing no guy wants to hear. No guy wants that. I sure do love you. Yes, I love you just like a brother too. Oh, God, I'm not even in the friend zone. Because when you're in the friend zone, you can maybe move that over to the boyfriend zone.
Oh, really?
When you're in the brother zone, that just gets creepy. She has set the boundary that it's gonna be creepy to do anything interesting with you. So there you go. But anyway,
he keeps hoping.
He keeps hoping, and he keeps an eye on Molly. He is looking out for her. But Molly has an eye for Stan. And Stan has an eye for Molly, because even though Xena's a very lovely and attractive woman, she's also an older woman, And, Molly is this fresh, young, beautiful attraction at the show, and he can't help but be drawn to her. And there is some chemistry between them in a lot of ways, but then there's also chemistry between him and Xena. And then again, this is Tyrone Powers, so there'd be chemistry between him and a rock, most likely, if he decided there was chemistry. But anyway, they set up the code signal, and Molly starts working with them to help them memorize it. And so Molly knows the codes as well as Stan and almost as well as Xena. And this becomes important because after a local sheriff tries to roust the carnival, Stan actually manages to essentially cold read the sheriff and completely convince him not to do it.
Yeah,
and it was a ridiculously good scene.
Yes.
That when he does this, I mean, it's just amazing. And for the listeners who don't know what a cold read is, and I am not going to say that. I'm going to preface this by saying I do not believe that there are not possibly psychics in the world, people with genuine paranormal abilities, people that can talk to the spirits of the dead, people that can see things that other people can't see. I'm not saying there are. I'm not saying there aren't. I prescribe that I don't know everything, so I'm not going to act like I do. But in this case, he's using a trick that fake psychics will use called a cold reading. And a cold reading is where you read cues off of the person that you're talking to. And you essentially go fishing. You make very, very general statements. Like, I see somebody in my mind, I see someone important to you, someone whose name starts with a B, Betty, Beverly, and then in your mind you're thinking, without even realizing you're doing it, you immediately start going, oh, a woman who's important to me whose name starts with B. Oh, my Aunt Beverly. Beverly, yes, Aunt Beverly. And he's like, yes, Beverly, that's it. And all of a sudden, your mark, the person you're working, thinks you have just made some sort of psychic connection to them. And really, all you did was prompt them in the right way to give you information. And doing the cold... Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so it's Barry. So on the B Moviecast page, I posted a excerpt from Orson Welles on a talk show. It was a British talk show where he talks about the art of cold reading. And if you Google Orson Welles on cold reading, you'll see that. And he talks exactly what you're going over now, Nick. But it's worth looking. I shut up now.
Oh, that's okay. And I became very interested in cold readings because in the early 2000s, the Sci-Fi Channel had started the ghost hunt craze with the ghost hunters, but they also had Crossing Over with John Edwards. And Crossing Over with John Edwards was essentially a TV show where this supposed psychic, and I do believe he was fake, named John Edwards, would come out and just cold read the crowd. And he would, there would be his production assistants would also gather information. But he was a really good cold reader. And so he would read the crowd and come across as this powerful psychic. And the show ran for like 4 or 5 seasons. So it was very popular. But that's how I got interested in what cold reading was. Because I watched this guy and I'm like, yeah, I've seen some psychics do some things that I can't explain. Everything he's doing is totally just cold reading. But anyway, we're going way down a hole here. But the whole premise of this act, though, is that it's essentially a type of fake psychic ability.
Yeah.
So you're using this code to make other people think that you're a psychic or you have paranormal abilities. You have some sort of spirit guide that's feeding you information. And really, it's somebody using a code or it's you doing a cold reading. And his cold reading of this sheriff was so good that the sheriff forgets that he was going to arrest Molly for indecent exposure. And by the way, Molly was wearing more clothes in her outfit that he was going to arrest her for indecent exposure than a lot of people wear to the prom these days. So, it really wasn't that much, but in 1947, in rural America, it definitely would have been scandalous.
Yes.
And he was also probably going to arrest the geek because, I guess biting the heads off chickens in public is illegal. I think there's probably some humane society issues with it, but I honestly don't know if it is or is illegal. But that's beside the point. And he totally talks him out of it. So they're all celebrating. But they had to close the carnival down to kind of make sure there was nothing to remind this guy that he needed to close them down. And so everybody's left except for Molly and Stan. And that's when we have this big implied hookup. And when they show up together at the local watering hole where everybody from Carnival's gone to celebrate not getting arrested and run out of town, that's when Bruno and Xena both make the connection that Stan and Molly have been up to funny business. And Bruno the strongman grabs Stan and literally puts him in a wrestling hold until Stan taps out. And tapping out means he agrees to marry Molly. And so the next thing you know, they're married. I was like, really? They did this? They just shotgun married them. Because Bruno loves Molly enough to know, hey, Molly's smitten with this guy. Molly's obviously slept with him. I better not let her be with child or something bad that could happen from that. So I'm just going to make this guy marry her to make Molly happy.
Yeah.
And for a time, they are happy. But this also convinces them to leave this carnival. Because Molly and Stan have the code. So they go off and create their own act. And it's kind of unclear how much time passes. But I'm going to say it's probably at least a year or two. And during that time, they have built up this fabulous show. And they've been playing for like 8 weeks straight at Chicago. And they're the toast of the town. Stan, the Stanton the Magnificent, the amazing psychic. And during one of their shows, when they're using this code, Lilith Ritter is there in the audience. That's Helen Walker. And she knows that it's a code. She doesn't know exactly what the code is, but she knows how he's doing his readings. And so she tries to trip him up. And I guess, what's the best way to put it? Stan is sharp enough, he has enough of his street senses on him that he picks up that she's trying to mess with him, and he turns the tables on her there during the reading. And she becomes fascinated by this, but she is a psychologist, and she is, or a psychiatrist, and she has some of the biggest named people in Chicago are her patients. And she has to have Stan come to her office. He comes to her office, they have a brief meeting, and then she's like, all right, now get out of here. Because Stan's proposing that they work together. And she's like, get out of here, man, and go out the back door. I don't want my client seeing you. Well, when her rich client comes in, she goes in the back room and puts on a record player. But, okay, this is 1947 technology. But it used to be you could buy blank records, and you would have a phonograph system that would actually record the audio onto the record.
I have an old,
album
from my dad, an old record that he
Oh, you
made.
got one of those?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing, and that was kind of the joke I was making earlier about the wax cylinders from an Edison phonograph.
Yeah.
It's the same principle.
Yeah.
But it turns out she's recording all of her patient sessions, and she thought that Stan had left out the back door, but he hadn't. He had rigged the door so he could come back in after the session started, and he found where she was recording all this. And he's pretty close to blackmailing her into helping him, because with that kind of information, he could take his con game to the next level. And sure enough, Lilith, she's out for money too, and she's just as bad as Stan. As they say several times, it takes one to know one. And those two know each other intimately without ever being intimate. And Stan and Lilith form a partnership where they go after some of the richest people in, Chicago. And they're talking about their dead wives, their dead husbands, their long-lost love who died. And the idea, and think about this for a minute, if there's someone in your life that you've lost, and you genuinely believed that there was a psychic that could help you communicate with them, how much would that be worth to you? Think about that. And in this case, they managed to set up one con that's going to net them $150,000 in 1947. So that's over $1 million in today's money, by the way, folks. So this is the big-time con. And at this point, I'm going to stop talking about the plot, because I don't want to dig deeper, but let's just say that the moral compass and Stan's female alter ego and all of the bad that has happened throughout the movie is going to come full circle here. And one of the things I kind of left out is throughout the movie, Xena keeps doing tarot card readings. And she does a tarot card reading right before Pete dies. And she's looking at her future and whether or not she should give the code to Stan. And she sees that if she gives the code to Stan, the future is going to be great. There's going to be money. There's going to be this. But she laid down a card for Pete, and there was no card for Pete on the table. It had fallen on the floor, and when she picked it up, it was the Hanged Man. And that's, the sign that death, essentially, this is something bad is going to happen. And sure enough, Pete dies. Well, later she does a tarot card reading for Stan when she and Bruno comes to visit. And let's just say the tarot card reading is not positive. And by the way, this lady drops more tarot cards on the floor than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, she just constantly dropping them. And that plays into the plot, because every time she drops a card, it's the Hanged Man. So, I don't know. But anyway, that's the film. Yeah.
The Hanged Man, yeah, so it prefaces death, the Hanged Man. And that card actually, what it means, it signifies sacrifice. The other thing it can mean is it's sort of like the ultimate surrender, but it can be a suspension of time. Now, there's different variants on the tarot deck, but there's also the other card that you see that's analogous to the Hanged Man is an image of Judas holding a bag of silver. But the Hanged Man, it really isn't death. There is a death card, right? You remember in, what's the James Bond movie with...
Live and Let Die.
Yeah, so there's actually the death card that she pulls in respect to Bond, right? Remember that?
Yep.
So, but the Hanged Man's a little bit different, and we do see it repetitively, both in the story and in the screen adaptation. But one thing I'll encourage people when they're watching the movie, pay attention to Lilith when she comes in, her body language. There's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot to be lifted from her body language, and particularly as her character evolves and you learn a little bit more. There's some scenes in that movie, and if you do have the Criterion version, watch the movie. Do not listen to the commentary. There's two guys bickering in that commentary. They're very knowledgeable, but they tend to argue about things like whether or not a theremin's being used, and they argue here and there, and they're both wrong, because it's not a theremin and it's not strings, it's an organ that's used as the cue for the geek. But it's like, how do these guys not know that that's an organ? But besides the fact that the commentary, which is otherwise pretty good, watch the movie and just appreciate the acting. I think it's Tyrone Powers. It's probably his best stint. The Razor's Edge, he does a good job as well. Great job. But it's pretty one-dimensional character. This character, if Cooper and Blanchett nail those two characters, they could come home with Oscars. There's no doubt in my mind. And the screenplay as well, if the way it's adapted. I could see Del Toro's crew, bringing home a few Oscars. Yeah. But it's going to be real dark. It's going to be a different interpretation. But be sure you watch the black and white film before going, this December to see this new movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Check it. And as a matter of fact, I think anybody who wants to see the Del Toro movie should see this film. And I'm actually considering getting the book. I think it's available on Kindle. I'm not gonna pony up for an original copy or anything like that. I haven't just conned $1 million out of somebody by showing them their dead whatever. But
I bought the soft cover.
Yeah,
it's a reprint from 2010. I bought it. It's still in print. It was $15.
Sorry, I was thinking. Go ahead.
Yeah, it has a nice preface. Gresham died. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was pretty destitute. But he killed himself. But he's a pretty interesting guy to read about him.
Didn't he die in the same hotel that he wrote this novel in?
I'm not certain, Mary.
I think I read that he went back to that same hotel, and that's where he committed suicide.
Well, that would be very poetic. So I will say this: a lot of times, your creative types will go out of their way to be poetic when they make their final gesture, as it were. So that it wouldn't surprise me if he did.
Yeah.
The Todd Brown, the biography on Todd Browning is another Dark Carnival. There's some similarities. That is another book that's worth reading. Dark Carnival, the biography. I don't know if David Scull, I can't remember who wrote that, but that's another one that reminded me some similarities. because Todd Browning joined the circus, and that was what inspired Freaks, his sideshow, his familiarity with the sideshow. But this is fun. I enjoyed it. It's be a pretty decent movie to watch right around Halloween, but I think people will like it. Hopefully they'll like the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe that they built the entire carnival set on the back lot of 20th Century Fox. Like
10 acres.
Yeah.
And they paid an outrageous sum to buy the rights for the novel. I think it was $16,000, in 1945, it'd be 46, 47, somewhere thereabouts. I think the novel's 46. That's a chunk of money, $16,000 back then.
Oh, I read that it was $50,000.
Well, yeah, I had read 16,000. Maybe it was 50.
Well, I tell you what, whatever. If it was 50,000, then that was about $350,000.
Well,
if it was 16,000, that was probably close to 110,000.
He bought a huge house. He blew it all. He was destitute at the end.
And you know what? That's what you do, and let the kids fend for themselves. Booyah! Party like it's 1999, man. Booyah!
I think part about it that made it so realistic was that they actually used real carny attractions and carnival people. They hired like 100 different attractions.
And they're in the periphery. You see them. Yeah. There's a fire eater, and you'll see them, out in the distance. Just look at in the beginning when they're going into the tent, all those murals, and think of the amount of labor and artistry that went into creating all those murals and tapestries. It looks, it's a impressive looking, visually stunning. The first time you see Xena, the first shot of her, she looks like a Greek figure, the way she's dressed and the lighting on her. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking a Greek tragedy, although she's far from being a tragic figure in the story, but the compositions, the cinematographer or director of art or director of photography knew exactly what he was doing in composing the different scenes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I don't have anything else. Good
I was going to
get back with you guys. Now, Mary, you going to be at Monster Bash or
not in October?
Ron's got a great lineup. He's got some of the Hammer guests there. I'm looking forward. I always like talking to Veronica Carlson, and so I did go to a show last week, and I went to the Cinema Wasteland in Cleveland.
Oh, how was it?
It was good, but it was almost 2 years since I had been to a convention. I went to Motor City Nightmares. It was a one-day thing for me, and it's weird. The hotel was not up. They just weren't organized for a con, and there's still restrictions, due to Delta variant, and Mu variant, and Lambda variant, and all these Greek variants of the coronavirus. So, but I thought people were engaging. People were still, staying distanced, and it was fun. I noticed in the film room, she didn't have people crawling on each other, and it's going to take a while to get back to normalcy. But
yeah,
I think it'd be a nice trip. I live in Michigan, so it'd be a nice drive out to Pennsylvania for the bash. So I am looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well. And I will say I can't make the bash in October either. I'm planning to be there next summer though.
Yeah.
And but I did last weekend have an event, and I almost forgot to talk about it on this show, and I want to talk about it briefly. I was at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival and CthulhuCon out in Portland, Oregon at the Hollywood Theater.
Yeah.
And first of all, if you don't know anything about the Hollywood Theater in Portland, Oregon, Google it. Because it is a fantastic, classic theater, just an amazing venue for something like this. And apparently it's one of the few theaters in the U.S. that is still equipped and ready to run 70 millimeter prints of films. So and that comes into play because apparently Quentin Tarantino loves the Hollywood Theater in Portland. Wow. And so it was one of the stops for when he took the Hateful Eight on tour, doing the 70 millimeter tour.
Oh, wow.
Film. Yeah, that was one of their big stops. And he's also apparently good friends with the guy who manages the theater. And so he comes there quite often just to watch movies.
Wow.
Because they have a really they do a lot of interesting film, collections. They'll run classic movies. They'll run film history things. I mean, it's just walking around the lobby and such, I ran across an original 6-reel editing machine for doing back when film was shot on film. To edit it, you didn't use a computer program necessarily. You used a table, and you ran spools of film, and you picked the pieces you want, and you spliced them together. And that's how you edited a film. Literally, you cut and pasted pieces of film together to make a movie. And that's the kind of table you would use to do some of that editing. And I just thought that was amazing.
Wow.
And that's just the theater where the event happened. And talking about the COVID precautions, by the way, I have been forced to travel a lot over the past year for work. And so I've been taking as many precautions as I can with traveling. And I've been very fortunate. I have not contracted COVID, and I'm touching wood as I say that. Also, I am vaccinated. But when Fiona and I went to the theater, everyone was required to remain masked throughout the event.
Wow.
You could lower your mask to eat and drink, but you had to put it right back up when you were done. And the other thing is, everyone was required to show proof of vaccination to get into the theater or proof of a negative COVID test within the last 24 hours. So they were taking their safety protocols very seriously. Now, that said, the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, as it ran this year, was a much scaled down event. It was, talking to the organizers, it was about 1/3 the number of attendees that they would normally have.
Wow.
And they were limiting the number of people that could come to the event.
Oh.
They also limited the vendors. They limited the events that were happening at it. Normally they would have a lot more panels. They would be screening movies on, there's a balcony in the theater that's actually been turned into another theater, and they would be screening movies there, but they weren't this year. It was just in the one theater. Now, all that said, why did I go to the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival? Fall of Usher, Brian's latest film that I produced, had its world premiere at the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. And it was very well received.
Right.
I do not know if we won any kind of award for it, because the entire film festival and all the content, with a couple of exceptions due to rights concerns, all the film festival entries, the short films and the features, were available for streaming over this weekend. So it happened, so I actually had a pass for the screening. So the actual event happened October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The streaming event happened the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And I will highly recommend one film that I saw. It was a short film, and you can find out about it. It's called What Happened in Skinner, or Skinner 1929, excuse me. And if you go to whathappenedskinner.com, you will find a very interesting little interactive story that's going to be released soon. And the whole idea is it's a found footage thing built around the podcast, built around doing a kind of an online treasure hunt. So it's very interesting. And of course, there was a really good film, which was Fall of Usher.
I wanted to do the streaming so bad, and then I looked it up online. It was like $40. And the
okay, whoa, Mary.
The only movie I really wanted to see was Fall of Usher. Well, I'd rather just buy it from you guys. Okay.
So there you go. And we don't get any money for this, by the way. But if we do win an award, that would be a nice feather in our cap.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I will say there were some really good films in that. Mostly it was short films. There were only, I think, 4 feature films that played at the event.
Oh.
And one of those, The Room with Yellow I believe it's called The Room with Yellow Wallpaper. And that one's already been picked up for distribution. So there was, because that one already had a distribution deal, that's why they couldn't stream it anywhere outside of the states of Oregon, California, and Washington. So, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And then other restrictions were based on countries, so a lot of the stuff couldn't be streamed outside of the U.S. But All of Usher we did allow it to be streamed, and, you know, there's a tiny bit of concern about piracy, but I'm not too worried.
Yeah.
To pirate a film stream this way is a lot of trouble, and this wasn't a streaming version of the new Bond film. So I don't think anybody's going to go to that much trouble to score a copy of Fall of Usher.
Well, it was in another festival in Vegas too, wasn't
it? This past weekend, it was at the Sin City Film Festival in Las Vegas.
Cool.
And I don't know how it did at that festival yet. I haven't heard from Brian, but it played on Friday. Now, when we had our world premiere, I was very pleased. We were the 8th. Our film was the 8th. Essentially, I think it started at 8:30 on Saturday night. So this was one of the 2 prime positions at the festival.
Cool.
You know, the 8 or 9 o'clock film on Friday and the 8 or 9 o'clock film on Saturday are going to be your 2 big positions, and we scored one of those. So big thanks to the organizers of the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, by the way. I am going to strongly consider attending it again next year just so I can get the full event experience. And hopefully by this time next year, we won't have to be masked and vaccinated and, you know, jumping through all the hoops that we have to jump through to keep everybody safe.
Yeah.
So, but I had a wonderful time, and thanks to everybody who came, who came to the screening. I didn't see any B-Movie-Cast listeners, but it was as full a venue as they would allow based on the restrictions.
Yeah.
And it was really nice to see the film in front of an audience. And we did a Q&A afterwards. It was myself and Riker Hill, the main actor. And so that was a lot of fun.
Ooh.
I always wanted to see that Del Toro's adaptation of, was it At the Mountains of Madness? He had to shelve it.
Yeah.
But he got far along. I saw some of the production drawings, and I would have loved to have seen him do that.
He also has a very significant collection of H.P. Lovecraft-related memorabilia and paraphernalia because he's a big Lovecraft fan. Yeah. And honestly, does that surprise anybody who's watched a Guillermo del Toro movie? I don't think so.
Yeah. You know, his Bleak House, it was right in the middle of bad forest fires, and I think he salvaged it, but it almost burnt down. But then those Acker archives, it was split up terrible because Fourier was very sick, and he had to sell a lot of his properties. And you see that stuff come up to auction. Some of it came up to auction this past summer, and I was just drooling at some of those Willis O'Brien hand sketches, and I'm like, and the people that are buying those are, you know, it's people like who's the Lord of the Rings guy? Peter Jackson. You know, it's people like him, and you know, even the special effects artists are trying to, you know, get historical stuff. You know, but I was so, you know, when I see that, I'm like, I don't want to even look at it. I don't want to be on the auction. I don't want to see it because I'm broke as is. So
yeah,
that's it. And I'm the same way. So, but yeah. So sorry to hijack the end of the before we even got feedback there, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this, and I will put up some links in the show notes on the B Movie Cast site for anybody who wants to check something out, including the What Happened in Skinner link.
Okay.
Because I did get to talk to those filmmakers, and they were a hoot. And I don't say people are a hoot light, so I don't take my hoots light.
We'll see everyone. Have fun.
Yep. All right, you getting a split there, Barry?
If you want to keep talking, we can talk.
Well, no, we're gonna go roll through the feedback now, but it's cool if you want to split. No worries. If you want to stay for the feedback, go for it. I will cut this little bit where we're talking about whether or not you're going to stay out. So,
well, that's part of the ambiance of the podcast. So I'll hang out for the feedback.
Cool.
Sure.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, in that case, I won't cut it out.
Yay.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to do the feedback now? Are we done talking about the movie?
I am so done.
Well, everybody
Let's
go
let
see
other
the
people
movie.
talk.
It was streaming on YouTube too, right?
What?
The movie we just did.
What? The
Nightmare
you
Alley.
mean Nightmare Alley?
Yeah, it's streaming on YouTube, I think. So
if it is, it's going to be a crappy print.
Oh.
Man, get a good print. See it either stream it with nice
Blu-ray.
print,
Or
the
get the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Unless you're real cheap,
like me.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mary. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Mary bought the Bluray of this.
I did.
And wouldn't pay to see my... Okay, anyway.
Well, it was on sale. It was really cheap.
I'm sorry. All I'm hearing is Mary didn't watch my movie.
I'm waiting to buy a copy from you.
Mary, I'm just kidding. All right, come on. Let's get to the feedback.
Okay. First thing, I want to thank Louis Perez for posting the clip of Jackie Chan on the Big Movie Cast fan site. Louis says, you mentioned on the Big Brawl episode you wanted to see Jackie Chan before his eye surgery. So here he is at 22 years old in Hand of Death, 1976. It was produced by Golden Harvest, filmed in South Korea, and directed by John Woo, known in the U.S. as the director of films like Face Off, Broken Arrow, Hard Target, and Mission Impossible. And I looked at the clip that he had posted, and everybody has to look at the clip because Jackie Chan does look different before his eye surgery.
he looks way different than Charlie Chan.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference there, guys. But anyway.
Yeah. So, let's see. This first piece of email is from David. Hi, David. He says, hello from Atlanta. I attended my very first Monster Bash in June of 2019. I met you both there and enjoyed hearing about the B-Movie Cast podcast. I'm embarrassed to say that I kept putting it off and just started listening a few months ago. Aww. Wow, you do a great job. Woohoo! And I've enjoyed everyone I've listened to so far. I like to hike a lot, and now I'll listen to your shows while I do it. The most recent ones I heard were Tremors and Squirm, and got a kick out of both of them. I won't be able to attend the October Monster Bash this year, as I'm committed to working at the Haunted House again. But if everything settles down in the world, I hope to make it next year. I really had a great time. Thanks for taking time to chat with me. I also met Brian when he was at your table and picked up a copy of his movie. And I'm now becoming a regular listener. Yay! I'm still new to using and listening to podcasts. This may be a dumb question, but is there a certain day or time that I'm able to listen to the show live or only recordings? Again, sorry this is so late to the show. And that's from David in Atlanta. So,
well, David in Atlanta, thank you very much. Yeah. And oh, go ahead,
As
Mary.
you've heard on this podcast earlier, we don't do live.
No, there's no such thing as a live B-Movie Cast unless you're a guest.
Yeah.
And trust me, you as a collective, you are all happy about this.
Yes,
Trust me.
Yes, very much so. But hope to see you next summer at the cast again, or at the Monster Bash. I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure.
I miss everybody. I really miss.
And everybody misses you, Mary.
Okay, this next one is from Ken Blow. Santito says, "Hello, Mary. At first I was going to guess the movie Mary sharing a few with friends at Monster Bash 2019 by David the Rock Nelson. But on closer
The Rock.
But on closer examination, I have to say it's the classic Frankenstein Island, 1981. A combination of the classic Frankenstein story and the popular network show Fantasy Island. Let me know who the new winner is when you get them." And I have to thank you again, Santito, for those delightful surprise packages you've been sending out. I look forward for the winners to post those things, the photos, because it's just so. You put a lot of care into packing those for people. So
yeah.
Thank you. And also,
they are. It's a super impressive prize package.
Yeah, it really is.
And The Rock is still going, man. He's 2020s, and he's David The Rock Nelson. He looks great.
I don't think he'll ever change.
I was going to say he is one of those never changing features of the Monster Bash. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
You know, it's like him and a big sheet cake on Saturday night.
He's like that Twilight Zone episode with that Long Live Walter Jacobson, or the guy he's like Civil War guy, and he still looks the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like sort of like the Night Strangler, and the Kolchak. He drinks human blood, and I think there's bone in the mixture. And so The Rock's got a formula that he's worked out.
I don't want to know what's in the formula.
Sorry, Mary, I'm still on.
Oh, let's see. I wanted to thank Santito because he shared a video in his email to me, and it's his daughter in Taekwondo camp practice sessions, and he shared 2 videos, and his daughter is fierce. I mean, those are not easy moves that she's doing, and it was really neat. I don't know who took the video, but it was a really good video. And those kids were doing stuff that when I was working with a trainer, I could barely get through, and they're doing it in the ocean against the water and waves, and it was amazing. So, kudos to your daughter. Wow. Okay, this next one is from Don Falcos. He's venting in this one. He said, "I'm really frustrated with Apple Podcasts. My own podcast, 2 Minute Bible, has been faithfully downloading to my phone via Apple Podcasts, even when it was still operating under the name iTunes, since the first episode became available in June of 2016. The episodes have always become available on the website at 4 a.m. on whatever day they were scheduled, and they never failed to appear on my phone within a minute or 2 of that time, until now. Last week's episode didn't download until late afternoon, and this week's episode, number 653, didn't download until late evening. How can they be so prompt for 651 episodes and then suddenly drop the ball? The worst of it is I have no control over how long it takes. Nor does Nick have control over when Apple Podcasts deigns to make the B-Movie Cast available. Episode 481, The Big Brawl, became available on the website on Tuesday. It downloaded to my phone on Friday afternoon. How's that for timely?
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on with that, but it pretty much, I usually just expect it to show up about 3 to 5 days after I upload it. So there you go.
Yeah, it hasn't shown up on my podcast app on my phone at all yet. The newest one.
Well, I think you've heard it, Mary, so I wouldn't worry.
He goes on to say, I knew something was amiss when I received a DVD in the mail. I know now this copy of Malignant was donated by Daryl Majewski of Scream Magazine. Thank you, Daryl. And thank you, Mary and Nick, for continuing to offer so many wonderful prizes in the BMC contest. back to my soapbox. I checked Spotify, and for some reason I can't explain, neither 2 Minute Bible nor B-Movie Cast appears to be available there. So can anyone recommend a different podcatcher where these and my other favorite podcasts would be available? So please, everybody, if you let us know if it's showing up in a timely manner.
Well, I'll be honest, Mary. It's not going to show up in a timely manner because it's Apple. So, that one we just deal with. Spotify, Vince has an account set up and I can't get into it.
Oh.
Okay. So, the B Movie Cast may or may not ever get on Spotify. It's technically on Spotify, but I think the only episode that's out there is like number 7.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I'll look into that one.
We'll see.
Yeah. But if anybody knows like a good app for the phone where they actually download, I guess my phone gets them off of Apple. That's what.
Well, and one thing, folks, you can always just on your phone use your web browser to visit the site and just download the cast directly from the website.
That's true. That's true.
It's fully downloadable in the player on the site, and the new site. And I say new loosely because it's been that for 2 years. But the new site is mobile enabled, so it is very easy to use your phone on the B Movie Cast site now.
Okay.
Okay.
Next one is from Dax Bradley. It says, "Hello, B Movie Clubhouse, Nick 1, and hi, Mary." Hi, Dax.
Hi, Dax. I beat you to it.
You don't sound like me.
Hi, Dax. Oh, Dax.
Oh, stop.
No, Dax, you stop.
The contest picture looks like 1981's Frankenstein Island. It would normally be a hard one, but I posted a picture and comment about this bizarre film recently on my Facebook page, Killer B Movies. Huh. That was a hard one for people this time.
I never heard of it.
I never heard of people.
Yeah.
Okay, and Barry?
Barry watches everything, and he's never heard of Frankenstein Island, Nick.
No, but you're better off never having heard of it. Who was it that described it as a mashup of Frankenstein and Fantasy Island?
Doesn't that sound
I would describe it as that if you made Fantasy Island for a budget of about $5 an episode, and everybody was doing crack cocaine or heavily drunk.
Yeah. So that's even before the direct-to-video, 81. So that was actually shot on film, and there were some bad movies in the 80s, just awful movies that I have problems watching. I can watch like a crappy movie, like a low-budget, like Ed Wood movie. Those movies are entertaining to me. There's a certain, feel that, there's just a nice romantic feel to those old crappy movies. But some of those movies in the 80s just suck. And the same with the 90s.
Yeah.
Not I might be offending some, people that made movies from that era. I don't know. But, now, the movies kind of suck now, I think, too.
So really, what you're saying, Barry, is you think movies just suck pretty much now.
It's like, I kind of agree with Scorsese, with all these superhero movies. It's like, what are we seeing? It's like, I enjoy them. Like I saw that, the new Marvel with Shang-Chi, what is it, in the Ten Rings?
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
That was very entertaining. I sat back and ate popcorn and really enjoyed that film.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I think I saw 3 movies this year. I like Kong versus Godzilla. I thought that was entertaining. And I'll go see the Del Toro, Nightmare Alley. And I'll probably go see Bond. I'm sure that's entertaining. But man, I don't know. I regress back. I'm watching Peter Lorre. That Box of Lee, that DVD collection from Severin on all them old European Lee movies. Man, there's like 10 hours of movies there with all them shows and all that. I just sat back and watched those. But that Frankenstein movie, I'll look that up. Is it available online and stream it?
I think it is, and it is actually, it's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bizarre is one of the things. It really is just, it's a very bizarre movie. And never have so many women in leopard bikinis run around Frankenstein Island so much.
Well, you didn't tell me about that.
So maybe I had that.
Well, Mary's
just
to
make sure you check it out.
Yes. I should have known
I'm sorry, Mary.
Why Nick liked it. Okay, I'm going to go on with the Dax Bradley feedback now.
Oh, yeah, sorry, we cut you off, Dax.
Thank you for the recent coverage of Jackie Chan's Big Brawl. That movie was my introduction to Jackie. Either that or Cannonball Run 2. I can't remember which I saw first on rotation on cable in the early 80s. They both were heavily cycled when Beastmaster wasn't on. Hey, that's what HBO stood for in the 80s. Hey, Beastmaster's on. I always loved that show. I always love the show. Keep up the great work. You guys are awesome. Dax out. Thank you, Dax.
Thanks, Dax.
Okay, and our last piece of feedback is from Stephen Turk. It says, hi, Mary, Nick, and whoever you have joining you today. The contest answer is Frankenstein Island 1981. I loved your episode on the Big Brawl. You need to have Michael Worth back for many, many, many more episodes. Woohoo! Well, isn't he coming up? What are we doing?
I think we're having him back next month to do Near Dark.
Near Dark, yes. How do you put up with Nick? I have yet to meet a rabbit hole that I don't go down. He is like the dogs in the movie Up. When they see or hear the word squirrel... Of course,
I don't know what he's talking about. Squirrel.
Of course, Nick's trigger word is Dune.
Dude,
Dune.
What are you talking
Dune,
about?
D-U-N-E. Dune.
Oh, Dune. Okay.
Dune.
What are you talking about?
I'm kidding, of course. This is why we love listening to Nick so much. He is totally unpredictable. This is true. This is true. I really sometimes wish I had a mute button where I could mute Nick. Hey, I think I
know you do.
Ooh.
You do?
Yeah, it's on the mixer.
Yeah, guess what, Mary? I edit the podcast. And I have a recording that I'm doing too.
You can always
you mute me, I will insert me.
But you won't know when I'm muting you.
Yeah, I'll know. There'll be a big old... Okay, here's the thing, Mary. If you mute me, that just means there's going to be this dead air space.
Yeah. Oh,
and when I'm editing the podcast, there's a little waveform that shows the audio. That's why we do a pause when I have to edit something. Because I can then just look and see the empty space.
I'll mute you, but I'll keep talking to the guest. And that way there won't be the dead
Sure you will. Okay, well, let me rephrase that, Mary. If you do that, I'm going to know I'm muted. You aren't going to win this fight, Mary. Just enjoy. Enjoy the net.
I'll just take a chill pill and then relax.
In retrospect, I'm going to watch Frankenstein Island. I'm looking here. Robert Clark, I like him. Right? Steve Brody, he was a quarterback. Cameron Mitchell. And then the director was Jerry Warren, who made some legendary stinkers. Including The Incredible Petrified World. Oh, it's brutal. And Carradine's Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
That can't be a bad movie.
Yeah, it can be, but it's a fun movie.
And it has leopard bikinis.
I can stream it free. I'm going to watch
it. All I have to say is, after you hear David Carradine or John Carradine say, the power, about 20 times in the film, you'll think you've got the power.
Okay, you could turn it into a drinking game.
There you go. Yeah. And alcoholism, once again, rears its ugly head here on the B-Movie Cast.
At this point, I think I'm going to go on with this feedback here.
Yeah, let's finish this feedback, Mary. Excuse me of being a squirrel.
There was another, Yeah, another rabbit hole. Squirrel. Okay, after listening to your episode, I rewatched Cannonball Run. You guys have to do it. Just remind Nick that it has Adrienne Barbeau in it. Yeah, that would work. On a side note, I was at the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. When you feel safe, then you have to come. Honestly, that has been on my schedule for years now, but either one thing or another came up, an outage or, well, COVID, and I really do want to go there. Because they used to have like a dinner that you could sign up for.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd really be fun.
By the way, Mary, now you're squirreling.
Yeah, I know.
Finish the mail.
Okay. It has a wonderful family atmosphere. The celebrities in attendance were great. I love talking with Marley Renfro, John James, Mary Badham, Lou Gossett Jr., and so many others. I also love talking with Juan and checking on him during the convention. I was there for all 3 days, and yes, the attendance was down this year for obvious reasons. The air conditioning was broken, but all those times that I went camping in the summer prepared me for it. I still had a wonderful time. Hopefully I'll see you there next year. Now I'm preparing to go to the Monster Bash this October. Hopefully I can get some interviews there. Be safe, Steve Turek. He does do some really great interviews. Yep.
He does, actually.
Yeah, he does. So that's it. That's the end. Podcast over.
That's it then?
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, folks? No. I guess none of us have any thoughts in our heads, so that's pretty typical.
That was 2 hours. Holy cow.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Is that typical? That's a lot of talking.
Typical for us.
Yes,
like
it's typical.
3. It depends.
Yeah, and Nick is working on keeping it to maximum, too, now.
Yeah, you try getting Mark Mostyn to keep it at a maximum, too.
Other than a Mark Mostyn episode. So on that note...
Yeah.
On that note...
Yes.
Good night, Mary.
Good night, Nick.
Good night, Barry.
Good night, Barry.
Good night, Mary. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hey, bye, gang. Y'all have a good evening.
You too.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Adios, Mafia.
Well, they've gone.
For good job?
No, just for now. It wasn't the right time for us to meet. But there'll be other nights, other stars for us to watch. They'll be back.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry.
All right, fellas, here's your story.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
Wait, Captain. I have found evidence of intelligent beings on this planet.
Look to the skies. It's the B-Movie Cookbook. Menus inspired by 15 of your favorite B-movies from the 1950s, with teenage werewolves, blobs, and enough cheese for everyone.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
But until then, we've got Ed Wood and Vincent Price.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
So impress your friends with dinner and a movie with the B-Movie Cookbook. We've got you covered. Get your copy today at bmoviecookbook.com. That's bmoviecookbook.com.
Let me see that book. I am interested to see what sways your mind so heavily.
Sure thing. Just visit bmoviecookbook.com.
Anybody around here want some coffee?
Transmission.
The good guys always win, even in the 80s.